good neighbor, lighting-wise here.
No,
All right.
okay.
I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to our meeting. Tonight on the agenda, we are going to discuss the chicken ordinance again, and we're going to discuss the possibility of a lighting regulation ordinance. We were going to get started with the lighting since we have guests in the audience for that, I think. I think it makes most sense. Didn't we make anybody stay longer than they wanted to?
Okay. Now, do you have a timing restriction? I think I read my letter and it was 4 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Have a little presentation.
Oh, no, we don't time you.
Yeah.
I don't know, sometimes.
Well,
We might
we're a
have
little
to
less,
make it
we're a little more casual here, so you can present as much or as little as you would like, Dana.
I mean, I would say within reason.
Yeah,
but
within
like,
reason.
We're not going to be
2
timing you for
hours,
4
but-
minutes.
Yes.
It won't be like the challenge or-
Yeah. Do you want to head up to the podium just so everyone can hear you?
Okay, yeah, I thought maybe my list, you would do a better job of the technical list. You can just come up here and help me out if I'm thinking, okay. So I'm going to read my letter first, and thank you very much for recognizing that there might be a need for the ordinances. It's a changing landscape. So, dear committee, I am glad that you are concerned with lighting ordinances and how we can create a healthy city for business, people, and wildlife as we grow. Hopefully, you will lead progressive ordinances and a better path for enforcement and accountability. Recently, a gas station had a fire and was renovated differently than when it was constructed under the watchful eye of the building department, and now is out of compliance. Preparing for tonight, I was surprised to find that developers' examples of best practices and compliance were negated by bad actors nearby with substandard fixtures and placement, which lowered the overall experience for pedestrians, drivers, residents, and visitors. These areas include Smith and Williams, Norwood Avenue, and Montgomery and Ross. Our best landlords and employers are being punished by their neighbors, and we are allowing it. We are sending quality employers a very mixed message. Compliance must be uniform. Let's follow good examples. The topics I'd like to focus on, at least tonight. A serious concern is that our new corner store ordinance will invite egregious lighting visible from homes. This happened at a corner store church at Hudson and Ellesmere, where floodlights were used in a soffit and lit the entire intersection, which resulted in a phone call, as you can imagine. Another concern is that currently schools and churches are exempt from commercial standards and review. They are considered residential. The reality is that churches are now developers and schools are large enough that their impact on the neighborhood is significant. Both schools and churches must come under compliance, as businesses must conform, especially when adjacent to residential homes. We need a tool to guide these changing dynamics. Finally, because a street or neighborhood has been treated with disregard, does not mean that we can continue to turn a blind eye and dismiss that area as irredeemable. In fact, those are the areas and residents that are most urgently in need of equitable, restorable solution. I urge you to see this as elevating and dignifying our citizens' experience, regardless of income, ownership, or tenure in the city. My primary non-technical ask for tonight, a more cohesive list will follow, to shield all bulbs from view, utilizing light without seeing its source, to restrict light emitted from a window, including from temporary signage, the temporary signs that hang in the windows, to restrict light pollution from a business to a residence, to restrict glare and bleed of light beyond its useful placement, to provide guidelines for security lighting in the form of enhancements by lighting architectural details. I thank you for starting this conversation. So I have examples of all of this that might make it a little bit easier. Well, anyway, Okay, so,
You can scoot the mic if you.
can I do that?
Yeah.
All right, so, when I was leaving the house to take pictures, okay, when I was leaving the house to take pictures, of course, I was like, okay, Birdie's looks amazing at night, Forrest and Williams. It's commercial, and it's surrounded by residential. It has appropriate recessed lighting, does not encroach, which doesn't encroach into homes or off the property. So it's well lit, they have security, and it's what they call reflected light, so they're sort of wall washing. And yet they still have their twinkle lights and stuff, it looks great. I hope you agree. So this is a fine example. Okay, so further down to Williams and Edmondson, here we have our good neighbors, Cornerstone and Edmondson, that's Smith and Williams. It's all commercial. They've got Mayfield Clinic and investment groups and all kinds of high-end stuff in there. And of course, when the Landing was seeking a variance for the site that they're on, Mayfield and the developer Cornerstone sent their lawyers in numerous times to fight it, and they were unsuccessful. So, sorry, I'm wandering off the trail here. Landing, of course, Susan Hoover got an email from me when they finally lit up the signs. Those what they call box letters are full of light, and they were so incredibly bright. And if you notice, the letters that face north to the neighborhood in the shell is the same size. I can make it. It's the same size as the one that faces Edmondson. Can you see that? And that's ridiculous because there's no one there. It's just throwing light. So they are a bad neighbor. So when you go around back,
Can I ask a quick question,
Sure.
just clarifying? So can you zoom back in on the landing for me? I just want to make sure, I love all your different descriptions of the lighting. So there's the,
okay, so I back to that. I think I know what you're going to ask. So what happened is I called and complained and said the letters are too bright and the
Okay.
bulbs need to be changed out. So what they did was actually the letters are turned off and now they have floodlights onto the wall. It's still very bright. It's not as intense, but it's throwing light everywhere. So if you notice, it got normally I would love this. Oh, I guess my mouse is showing up. I love this kind of thing, but if you look to the back, they have the same treatment on the back wall facing the residences on Duck Creek. So we have two sad neighbors here. We have Cornerstone, which doesn't want it, and we have the people on Duck Creek, and the Landing basically got away with it.
can I ask my question, Dana?
Yes.
So if you can zoom back in on the landing for me, the lights in the front that are going up and down, those are okay.
Well,
The-
to
the
me,
bright-
they're more than is needed.
Okay, but then that really bright light on the corner of the building,
That's
is that
too bad.
is that a floodlight?
I think so.
Okay. And then you're saying that on the back side of this building,
Yes.
it's the same treatment as the up and down lights?
Yeah, they probably have like, I don't know, 9 of them.
All right, thank you.
Now, I understand they don't want graffiti, and I understand, but this is like way over the top, and the business is closed right now. So if you look, this is the other kind of interesting thing, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but the CarX has its sign off. See the sign there? The sign is off. They've got this light is actually coming from the Landing, and they've got a little light out front, but the Carex is actually a good neighbor. Which I can't believe I'm saying because I used to complain about the Carex.
So I will say, just with the landing, just like my limited knowledge of some administrative law with the dispensaries, I know that they are supposed to keep like their loading bay and like lighting outside secure. I'm looking at the Ohio statute for it now, and it's pretty vague, honestly. So as far as the dispensaries go, I would like to, not to get too specific, obviously, you're just using examples, but
a
like,
trash door and a loading dock on
Yeah.
the UDF.
Okay.
Up near Ross.
okay, actually, that's
To
great.
show that.
It can be
don't
less
need
intense.
This much either. And
Okay.
they're in kind of a more,
A more pedestrian heavy.
well,
Area.
more,
Yeah.
I don't know, a less affluent part of Norwood, frankly. So at any rate, so we have our good neighbors, we have our bad neighbors, and then I did want to point out that just in looking at this, I tried to put these two pictures together so you can kind of see how you get a panorama. But, you know, the Carex is getting by just fine. So, I don't know. So across the street, here's our gas station, which, of course, caught fire. I don't know why this isn't letting me. Oop. It caught fire. And when they rolled into this tank, this fuel, part of the fuel station, everything caught on fire and it was covered with smoke. Well, if you remember, this canopy around the top came down much further. And the lighting that they had was kind of like a drop ceiling. It was covered. And so now the bulbs are out and the canopy is gone. So I'm just sitting in my car. So I'm obviously below grade and I am looking at all these lights. It's much brighter than it was before the fire. They've got this light. Look at the side here, that's all lit up. I mean, yes, it's recessed, but it's throwing so much light that if you look over here in this person's yard, that's all lit up. So it's throwing a lot of light. Again, Cornerstone has to look at this. Get that they want security, they want their cameras to work, but they need to go back to the canopy and the bulbs that aren't showing. Is that helpful? To see the comparison?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
yes.
So I'm going to move on to a good neighbor. This is not its best time of year, but this is the UDF at Smith and Leslie and Forest. And what I always laugh about this because in the summer when we were doing our research grant, this sign, has all these wonderful prairie grasses, flowers, and they keep it looking really good. It's always free of litter. And that corner, it's not a 90 degree, it's kind of like 30 degree. And it really looks good. And of course, once that all comes in, what it does is it kind of frames the lighted sign so you see it, but it also kind of buffers what's going on at the fuel station. So there are a lot of positives about this, and it's one of these things that, I remember when they redid it and the lighting levels came way down and Carl Linder was still alive, and he used to watch over stuff in Norwood like you wouldn't believe. And it really showed with this one. So you can see they got the small branded signs. They have appropriate shielded overhead lighting. It's not like the shell at all. The lights that are underneath, you can't see them. You're just getting the light. Notably, the store lighting inside they're using that lighting to kind of promote the building, but it's not too bright. I think they have a film on it. I think they did something like that at the one on Montgomery near the factory. Canopy, branded signage. Lighting is not greater than the automobile headlights. So if you look at the cars that are stopped there, it's not like the shell, where the shell is brighter than headlights. Okay. All right, so that's my little, I hope the notes are helpful with the image. Okay, Now, I went over to, I was trying to come home and I saw the old church and I said, now, that's what I'm talking about. I used to live a block from here and back when there was a corner store there and stuff. And, you know, it was just kind of like a real quiet little pocket of Norwood that people don't really know about. So what's nice is, I'm sorry, my camera in my phone isn't great, but you can see that they have a lighted sign in the corner. It's just enough, you can read it, but it's not shedding such that it upstages the church. So they've got this wonderful pediment and porch on the church, and they make the most of that by putting this glowing light inside of it along with the steeple. So they're using architectural lighting to say, here we are. And they're just using the sign to kind of punctuate that. So that's a nice thing. The other thing is that, I'll just blow this up, there's the pet spot down there. They're closed. Their lighted sign is off. All right. So I know you guys like auto supply, save screen print your t-shirts and stuff, but I mean, I'm looking at the church and I turn and there's auto with these two floodlights, which are pointed to their parking lot. Every light in this place is on. And this poor person next door, this is a house. This is a person that probably thinks they have no right to call anybody about this. So this has created an eyesore. Yes, it's a new building. This is not the correct lighting for this situation. Ironically, you go down about 200 yards, and there's the gas station, the old Swifty, sitting there with lights off, and it's a good neighbor. So they've got some lighting, just enough, not too much. Nobody's going to vandalize it. There are homes across the street on Norwood Avenue there, so they don't have to look at it. The other irony is that right next to, I skipped over this, sorry, right next to the auto supply screen printer is the Christ Hospital Physicians Rheumatology offices. And they don't feel the need for all this lighting. So that's a beautiful building. They built that. They were early adopters, I'll tell you that. So is it really fair for this person to have this come in next door? They probably haven't called in. Nobody's called in complaint. You know, I get tired of being the squeaky wheel, but yeah, somebody needs to track that one. All right, so my other, I thought my friend Nikki was going to take the vape store because she has to drive by it, and that's her like pain point. But of course, I think that this store came up in your previous conversation, Sam. I don't know if you were talking about this one or the one next to Paper Street, but
This is the one
this is the one.
by Thornton's.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
No, this is the one on Montgomery Road across this, near the
I like-
solar.
Okay, this is one of the ones
This
that
is the one
I
I
was
brought
thinking
up.
of. Yeah.
So they have flashing lights, they have lights hanging, they have a lot of light inside. So I feel like one of the holes in our ordinances is that the light that's inside is coming out, and maybe sometimes it needs a film. And of course they're saying, well, doesn't count because it's all temporary lighting. This isn't permanent. I would take it to the back room. And they're only counting, I think our ordinances only count these box lettered lights and the mounted signs and stuff like that. When you turn and look north, you see the Lee's Chicken. And the thing about the Lee's Chicken is they're closed, their sign is off, but they have these neon lights that wrap the building. And this isn't a good illustration because it's dark inside, but those lights are so bright. They're the brightest thing there, and they are closed. I have been thinking, sorry. Uh-oh. Whoa. Sorry, guys. So, I had been thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna get that old PDF and show how bad they are. Well, once I got done looking at the leaves in the vape store, and I realized when I got home and I looked at all the pictures, this UDF, as far as things go, is not like our worst problem. And while this shot isn't very good, the lighting on the White Castle is really just lighting. They're lighting the building there, but you can't really see a lot of bulbs and stuff. So one thing about the side of the UDF here is, if you look at this bottom photo right here, you can see that's their dumpster, that's their trash, that's their loading, and this is not bad. This isn't anything like the landing. Then, notably, just like Mason and Cornerstone got Paycor and Linden Point, and Paycor has this beautiful logo, everything around it's dark, it shows off their logo great, and the urology group, all the same. That's because everybody was minding the store when those got built. Thank you, Chris. And, but of course, what are they looking at? They're looking at vape store. Okay, wrapping this up, bringing it in for a landing. We're gonna make you feel good. Okay, after that stressful moment. Here we've got the Venturas again. We're beginning and ending with their property. I thought it was so cool because I came up station and I thought, wow, this is so great. They have their entry isn't at the front, it's at the back, but they make this front entrance. How do they do it? They didn't build up something. This thing has been there forever, but they painted it and they lit it. This lighting that makes you know this is the entrance. It feels safe. I'm sure there's cameras there. The top of the building, there's no lighting. They're just letting it transition. It's beautiful. And then same thing here. It's a beautiful job lighting wise. I don't know if Miranda's their lighting expert. Somebody knows what they're doing. So I was thinking, okay, I'm going to get some of these fast food restaurants. And then basically the KFC, Taco Bell, it kind of has a nice lighting. I mean, it's not wonderful, but it's not as bad as the landing. It's not as bad as a lot of fast food. So, so that's it. I don't think it's fair that, we have these wildly different expressions of our ordinance. So I hope you can, click on that and just. Now, okay, now you're going to come up. Do you want to use any of these?
What do they have any questions?
Oh.
When you're talking about good neighbors and bad neighbors, how much of that is based on our current ordinances?
I think that we have good ordinances, but it takes people like me calling, which is, I don't know, I think we should be a little bit more proactive. How did these happen in the first place? I think that the landing went through and maybe got some variances. I mean, they seem to want to just push and ask for forgiveness later. So, I mean, that might be a better question for Chris.
Okay.
He knows the ordinance better. That's it.
So my question is, what would you like to see happen?
Well, I think we need to take care of our worst offenders and not reward them, because once we set that precedent, everybody else thinks, all these vape stores think, well, me too. Gave it to them, you got to give it to me. And I think that how we treat businesses which are next to residences is very, very important. And maybe it should be the same in our commercial area, because in our commercial areas, we're just compounding all this lighting. And so the city has to play a role too. The city's own lighting could be better than it is. I haven't really
In what respect?
What?
You said the city's lighting could be better, like in
Right, like
streets
say,
or?
the street lighting, we could have, we have things that kind of fan the lighting and they could be in cans. Our parking lots are lit in a kind of messy way. And I just didn't have time to get into that.
And even I would consider Montgomery Road a commercial area, but something that's been coming up a lot lately is that a lot of the redevelopment on Montgomery Road is including building apartments and residential spaces upstairs from all these commercial areas. Even though Montgomery Road may be a commercial area, there are people who live on Montgomery Road who face Surrey Square, who face these buildings. They certainly don't want to be hit with all the light pollution. I do think, and I live nearby, so maybe I'm a little biased, but I have noticed what a beautiful job, especially the Ventura building, has done with lighting, where it's still very noticeable. It feels very secure. It feels like they wouldn't have any safety issues, and it's not offensive. It's not overbearing. My thoughts specifically about the landing are probably down to security, specifically because it's a dispensary and because they deal exclusively in cash. I would think that they would have heightened security issues.
Yeah, they have to have like
because of that.
a secure loading bay, which I don't know like the case law on it. So it's a pretty new area.
All I know is from a background
Yeah.
in banking, they are not allowed to accept any kind of digital
Yes.
payments whatsoever. They only operate in cash, and so I would imagine
Yeah.
that they do have heightened security issues because of the volume of cash on hand. But I think there are probably ways to go about
Yeah.
addressing those security concerns in a way that is not creating these.
The
offensive-
UDF bay you showed, I mean, that looked secure to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that would have to be a discussion
Yeah, I think that's
with
a
local
more-
dispensaries to
a
see
more
like what.
complex situation.
Yeah,
Now the vape shops, I don't know, that rope lighting's not making anybody feel secure.
No,
Well, there's only 2 dispensaries in Norwood.
Right.
It's, and I don't think there's any issues with,
Queen
the
City.
Queen City.
And they have done a beautiful job
with the lighting.
that internal lighting. They've frosted all those windows, and so there's still a good amount of lighting, but it's not glaring. There's not a bunch of.
yeah, certainly the landing probably doesn't need to have their letters lit up all night long, so.
I don't
If I
think
had to
anyone's
guess.
stealing from up there.
So when you say go after our worst offenders, what does that look like?
Well, I mean, I like to go after problems because I think there's a bigger payoff. That's just like my approach always. So, the flashing lights, the lights that's coming from inside, and the containing the source of light, and those, the list I had in my letter, those are kind of, I think, the low-hanging fruit. But Chris, I don't want to steal Chris's thunder because he has great strategies too.
Okay.
Dana, when you say go after our worst offenders, what does that look like? What, you're talking about creating ordinances to
Where
prevent some of those bad neighbor examples, or?
where you have immeasurable lumens that you can't exceed. And actually, I think we have a pretty clear ordinance about light levels. It's just, I don't know who goes out and measures it, or if Mark Graves unscrews the bulb and says, oh, no, this is like 2000, you can't use this bulb, which is, I think, kind of what happened with.
I reached out to Clint today to see if we had anything that measures lumens. As far as he knows, we don't.
It wouldn't be through Clint, it would be through the building.
The building department, okay.
And I did have a conversation, and I cannot remember if he has one or not. We had a conversation about what the item is called.
We can reach out. Is it
now I don't-
photovoltaic or something? That's another thing that
We just had this whole conversation, but I don't remember if we have it.
I would be interested in what the code enforcement looks like on lighting, because that does feel more complex. Than
Yes.
like, no, you cannot have a couch on your front porch.
Yeah.
And who exactly oversees that? And I guess, yeah, what that process looks like. Is there a letter then issued to the business? Is there a recommendation or?
I know for other building violations, we typically send a letter and you have 30
Or
days to fix
days.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, that feels fair and reasonable.
Sorry. Been ill.
Hydrate.
Well, thank you, Dana.
Well, thank you
I was
very
thinking-
much for your time and not getting too impatient and questions.
No, I think that was very informed because as for someone like me, I don't know. I don't know a lot about design. Like I think I know what looks good and what looks bad, but like I don't know why. So I do appreciate, yeah, like I don't know for what reason. So thank you for, I think that's actually very helpful that you went through.
I think what Chris has to say will be, interesting for you from a legal and.
That's usually where I
Yeah,
go.
yeah, that would be.
Thank you, Dana, for that build-up. Hopefully I will meet your expectations. My name is Chris Brown, 4292 Ashland Avenue. Kind of, when you're thinking about this whole concept of lighting and light pollution, it's a relatively new understanding of the impact of artificial lights on the environment. It's only here recently, probably within the past 10 months, that people have started to realize that something doesn't feel right. And they are starting to identify the fact that they don't feel right with this artificial lighting. And there is, unfortunately, this is a relatively new phenomenon. Fortunately, we have two benefits. One is there are outside organizations that have extensively studied and can tell you all the hows and whys of light pollution. The other fortunate part about it is light pollution, and I just read this recently, is one of the few pollutions that as soon as you turn the light off, it goes away. There's no cleanup. We don't have to worry about where we're going to put that waste. We don't have to worry about removing invasive species. As soon as those lights go off, the light pollution is gone. One of the fascinating things that have happened in Montreal, there was a blackout and people were calling 911 to report these bright lights in the sky, and it turned out to be the Milky Way. But because of the light pollution, they had never seen it, and the blackout turned off all the lights, and so for the first time, a lot of people were able to discover the Milky Way. So just picture the night sky if there were no artificial lights. But there's other bad things besides being unable to look up at the sky and see phenomenon that have guided people for centuries, one of which is the effects of people's sleep cycle, the nature. So there's a lot of bad stuff that can be attributable to artificial light that's improperly designed. And I think that's the key point, is we're not talking about getting rid of all lighting. I think that the focus on in terms of addressing this light pollution is identifying light pollution to try to minimize as much as possible the negative impacts of artificial lighting. So there are three things that typically people focus on with artificial lighting. The first is, what are you lighting? Are you actually lighting stuff that you need to light? I think that Dana has some very good examples. I mean, she's showing lighting that's projecting to a sign to a closed business. Do you really need to light that area? So making sure that we light only those areas that really need to be lit. The other thing, and that goes for, this is the whole concept of the full cutoff fixtures. A full cutoff fixture basically is projecting the light down so that you don't have all this light just going out into space and blocking the stars and getting into people's houses. So it's being projected downward to areas that are really where we want to light the locations, the entrances, the loading docks. The other thing that they focus on is, when do you light? Do you need to have a light go on from dark to dawn? As someone who loves Christmas lights, I hang up Christmas lights. I have my lights on a timer. And I do that for two reasons. One, I don't want to pay the electric bill to have my lights go on and have somebody admire them at 3 a.m, because that's when a lot of people are not out and about. The other is, do you need to have lights on all the time, both indoors and outdoors? The other thing that is really becoming a new issue is they call it the warmth of the light. Pool lights, and again, I don't know the science behind it, it's just what's being reported. Pool lights, such as the pool LEDs, have a higher negative effect on people's ability to sleep, on just natural functions in general. So all of your cell phones, those cool lights, those cool screens, you're hearing all this effect on people's eyes, people's ability to sleep. It's because of the color of the light, not necessarily the brightness of it. So they're advocating these warm color lighting, the natural lighting of the sun, think candles, think these warm colorable lighting. So those are three areas that you can focus on when you're crafting your ordinance. When do we want lights to be turned on? Where do we want lights to project? What color do we want the lights to be? Fortunately, there are many model codes that have been designed by the International Dark Sky Association and other organizations that really know about lighting.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
And they have, and again, they focus on those three things. The easiest is the full cutoffs, the cool lighting, and having it be set to a motion sensor. Only turning on the lights when you think that somebody is going to be there. Another thing that seems counterintuitive, we always associate bright lights with safety. That's not necessarily the case. I think, Dana, you have some good pictures, and I don't want to single out OTO, but I think that I understand what they're trying to accomplish. Can you bring up the OTO picture?
The shell is very cool with its lighting, right?
Yes. So that is a bright, cool light. So that's going to have that, think of it light as waves. So the color of the waves are different in a cool color than a warm color. And just that differences negatively impacts people. Again, I'm not familiar with the science. I just know that that is something that people are discussing. So if you look at this area here, the OTO, they have this bright glare. And I'm sure they're doing it for safety because they want to make sure that people can't break in. But the problem with bright glare is people can hide within the glare. Our eyes, and again, I read this in a book. I YouTubed it, I Googled it, so if anybody wants to Google this, you as humans, we can see in the dark to some extent. It's when the bright light comes on that we lose that ability to see in the dark. So if there is somebody in that glare, that can be just as dangerous as having no lighting. Bad lighting is just as dangerous as no lighting at all. So that's something to consider or to kind of talk with people if they have any questions. Bad lighting is worse than no lighting at all in terms of safety. So I think going forward in terms of ordinances, again, there's model ordinances out there. When the zoning code was redone back in 2013, there was a little grain of these concepts of addressing light pollution built in, especially as it relates to the full cutoffs and the number of quote unquote looms. Again, this is a way that they measure the brightness of the lights. That's being built into the ordinance. The problem is it is so technical. It is such a new concept that I don't know if the city has had when we wrote it or has now the ability to fully enforce that ordinance. So that might be a reason why some of these examples are being shown. It's just that these are examples of lighting that the city just didn't have the capacity at the time to address. So maybe it might be a matter of just making sure that a inspector understands the ordinance, because you can write a perfect code, but if no one knows how to enforce it, it's just might as well just sit there on the shelf and be something that can be applied in the future. But again, the good thing is that this is an easily corrected problem, and for more importantly, for business owners, for homeowners, it's not that intrusive. I think that that's the key thing. It is just as simple as something that we do naturally already. Most people in their homes are turning off the lights if they're not in the room. Just getting into that habit of lighting where you need it, when you need it, and making sure that you're using the appropriate brightness and the appropriate color to minimize the negative impacts of light pollution. The other thing that's a lot of people don't understand, and OTO, I understand why they're lighting it up, but I hate to see what their electric bill might look like. Because that is just money that is being projected out into space where they don't need to light it, and they're not getting the most efficient use of their lighting in that manner. there are ways and there are organizations and companies that design lighting specifically to minimize the glare, minimize the light pollution, and maximize the savings that a business has by making appropriate lighting, making lighting that actually works for them. Yes.
I have a, altering something like this, would that, and I'm not expecting you to be an expert
Sure.
on this, but would this be simply a matter of putting sort of a shield over, sort of a shield
cutoff
over it and a
feature?
vertical?
So-
Or are we talking like thousands and thousands of dollars?
No. What you're talking about is, first of all, the first question I would ask is this business open right now? So if when Dana drove by, was the business open? Because that would explain the indoor lights. Okay. But let's say that this is a shot taken at 1 a.m. where the business is closed. So first thing you would notice is, why is the indoor lights on when no one's in the room? So that's a matter of simply turning off the indoor lights. So the two bright lights, I bet those are non-cut off, non-covered fixtures. If they swap those out to project down, that's going to cut all the glare that's being projected up, and it's focusing on the light that they want to show. I don't know what they're trying to light, except if they're doing it for the parking lot. Because right now, all they're doing is they're lighting up the side of the building, and there's really no architectural features, there's really nothing in that shot. So a lot of questions is, what were you trying to light? And there are better ways of doing that that's going to accomplish your goal, that's going to save you money, and also will not have the neighbor have that light being projected into their bedroom. And it could be something as simple as being the cutoff fixtures and a timer, or a motion sensor where if something comes by it, that turns on the light rather than have it constantly on when you don't necessarily need that light.
Thank you.
And the other thing, and Dana is right to some extent, even the city can sort of explore and audit how they're using light. Are you using it in the most efficient process? Are you lighting what you want to light? Are you lighting it when you want to light it? And more importantly, it could be a factor that you can save money by putting in appropriate lights. Do you need that floodlight that's at the parks? Do you need the way that the city hall's lit? All those things can be a factor in kind of showing a good neighbor and kind of cutting down the light pollutions, saving money, and kind of recognizing that we're kind of learning some of the negative aspects of inappropriate lighting. And again, it's not all lighting, it's just inappropriate lighting that doesn't give you the maximum bang for the buck, because Dana has shown us example of these beautiful buildings that have appropriate lit, the atmosphere that's created by that lighting. We're not trying to, I hope you're not trying to prevent that, it's just trying to come back to a reasonable regulation so that people have appropriate lighting.
Yeah, talking about brightness not equaling safety, because my assumption is that a lot of these lights that are used at nighttime are to increase visibility. I was recently in a crime prevention workshop with the Cincinnati Police Department. They were discussing like using architecture to decrease crime opportunity, and that like lines of sight and visibility are really pivotal to that. And me, with my admittedly less than perfect vision and my astigmatism, I see worse in bright lighting at nighttime than I do in low lighting. Like LED headlights make it harder for me to drive.
The bane of my
because low
existence.
lighting. Honestly, especially cool ones. So that's a really smart point that I would not have considered. If I just look at this with no context, I would say, oh, that's security lighting to keep the parking lot safe. But it occurs to me that I can see less in that picture than I would if that was just lower lit.
Yeah, and there are a lot of cool sites, as I get the International Dark Side Association. They have all of the information, all of the science, all the cool pictures of showing before and after, and what you're seeing in the before and after. And hopefully, maybe at a future date, you can pull up pictures to show residents of glare and then these intimate Hallmark type pictures that you see on Instagram posts, because they've appropriately lit areas to make it to give it that awe, to give it that atmosphere, not glare.
Mr. Brown, what was that resource?
International
International
Dark Sky Association, and there is an Ohio chapter.
I emailed them, but only this week, so.
Yes.
They,
Yeah.
they
And again,
haven't had 3 business days or anything.
They are
to
probably
reply.
more eloquent in terms of this,
Yeah.
the science behind it, in terms of all the benefits. And dark sky is a misnomer because everybody thinks of dark and it's scary and all that. Think of it as starlight. Think of it as all the Vincent van Gogh paintings of Starry, Starry Night, all of those things that, because there wasn't this abstract light pollution blocking out and glaring onto other people's property.
I have to say, I mean, I've gone to Michigan up to the Sleeping Bear Sand Dunes last couple of years, and you can see a full night sky. And even, I grew up in like a rural suburban community, so I've seen the Milky Way many times. But up there where there is no light pollution, it's one of,
level.
it's crazy. It makes you feel so insignificant and so big at the same time, which of course we're not going to have here in Norwood, but it'd be nice to see more. It's always nice to see more stars.
Well, the other
Yes.
thing to keep in mind, we witnessed the eclipse on Monday.
Right.
That was a once in a multi-generational event because of how the sun and the earth. Picture a situation where we can see something as significant as the eclipse, such the Milky Way, every night, and all we have to do is adjust our lighting level, turn off the lights we don't need, make the light shine where we want it to shine, so that we can open up the sky to allow for this phenomenon that's there. It's there right now, but we can't see it because of the lights.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Okay. And I went through the Dark Sky website this week. It is very helpful, and they have sample legislation. I will just say, I feel like I do not know. They have lighting engineers who helped do it. I do not know enough about any of this really right now to, do you, like, just for example, do you have a preference on lumens versus, I know it measures like
don't.
lux, and I did my best. I did YouTube research is what I was looking at.
I don't
Okay.
have any preference. What I would say is I recognize that there are smarter people than
Right.
I. If the smart people at Dark Sky said that this is a lumen,
Right.
then that would probably be a good starting point for discussion. I
Yeah.
do know that the full cutoff and the full cutoff, the motion sensor or just turning off lights when you don't need it, and the warmth.
These like practical things we could do.
Practical things I
Yeah.
think that most people can understand.
Yeah.
Because if people will understand the difference between an orange light and a bright blue light.
Right.
And a full cutoff and a non-full cutoff.
I think you're right. I think those would be good start. Because I was a little overwhelmed, of course, because
But-
we were talking about lumens at the last meeting, and we kind of all agreed we don't really know.
We were looking at like an acronym dictionary for different lighting terms, and all of us were like, don't these mean the same thing? What's the difference?
Lumens it's a measurement of the light wave and
And I saw like candle distance, like,
yeah.
yes, like light from candles.
Isn't there a difference between the way LED, like the rope lighting, is measured versus a light bulb? Or am I making that up?
I know watts are different. Watts are like
Well,
their
and
own
there's
thing.
The throw, and
Yeah.
then there's the
Trespass
glare, and then
measurements,
there's the-
yeah.
there's a
Because
bunch.
the rope lighting, I guess, doesn't throw light. Is
In
what's
theory,
the?
but the rope lighting in the vape shop windows has so much glare to me.
It
But maybe a
has
throw and a glare
glare.
are two different things.
It
Right.
could be the glare, it could be that the glare of what they have is causing the rope light to not be as effective as what they're trying to do.
Could be my astigmatism.
Yeah, I mean,
Hard to say.
the one thing is, and you might want to reach out to the Ohio chapter or even the international, I do believe that they have the ability to do what's called a light audit. So they can basically tell you, here is what's causing the issue, and more importantly, here are the suggested steps
Yeah.
to kind of bring it in. And it could be just simple legislation of when a building department's looking down, they see that a non-full cutoff floodlight, they just said no. And it could also be too, the city's gonna have to be involved because you don't want to light trespass on people either. And
Right.
you want to save money by not lighting up a field that no one's gonna be playing on.
Right. And based on what you've said, I feel like even reaching out to the Chamber of Commerce and telling these businesses that these features make your buildings look nicer, it will save you, motion sensors will save you money. And like, unless you are a dispensary or something where,
Or even on a dispensary.
You may have other
if
regulations.
Security,
Right.
Is the lighting really making it secure?
right.
Or is
And at
there
the
a
very
better
least,
way?
they could do
Is there
the-
a better way?
Yes,
That's the thing.
right.
There's always a
So-
better way to kind of address those concerns.
Right. So even if I was just thinking like that may even be a good starting point to have, if we get some good connections, we could reach out to the Chamber of Commerce maybe and discuss
And I'm
a
looking at the
presentation.
Dark Sky Assessment Guide. Fascinating.
There are a lot of good
And they can do
resources.
citizen science. I mean, you can
Yeah.
get school kids involved to measure light pollution. There's a lot of, again.
Yeah, we should make the kids do math.
You're at the tip of the iceberg, but the key thing to remember is once you've addressed the problem, it happens immediately. It's something that you don't have to wait for the tree to grow back up when you
Right.
plant it. You don't have to worry about where we're going to put the garbage. This happens immediately when the lights go off.
Right. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
So I think we have a lot to think about. And of course, we'll keep this on the agenda. I don't think we'll have any good legislation
We're not gonna-
tonight.
We're not resolving it right now.
No, consider, yeah. But I do think like there are practical solutions, right? So hopefully we can just, even if we don't get something on the books, like I said, I think even if you just, reach out to a business, this sounds so common sense to just say, you save time, your business looks better. Like, I don't feel like there should be that much pushback, hopefully.
I think if we had a workshop or something where Mark Reeves maybe explained
Right.
enforcement, because I do know he has been responsive and cured some problems. I haven't fully investigated, but there's like the Ohio Environmental Council, which does a lot of legal action, and they've got a big lead remediation program, and I reached out to them because I thought, oh, well, they'll have an expert, and they haven't gotten into this yet. So maybe there's some other means of doing that, kind of in Ohio or something. But right now it sounds like the Ohio chapter of Girl Scouts.
I'm sure they will get back to me. Okay.
There was in the one email I had a bunch of links. One at the very bottom is pretty quick 20-minute documentary of a town that rolled back all their wasteful lighting, and that's a pretty inspiring video to watch. It's all the way to the bottom though, so all that out. It's not technical. It's
Oh, the PBS one?
yes, the
Okay.
PBS one.
I mean, when you think about these like destination towns that have these little romantic shopping commercial hubs,
Yeah.
they're
So
all
not Norwood.
low lighting. They're all welcoming. Like none of them have LED strip lights and neons in the windows.
I'm driving 7 hours every couple years to go
Right.
to sand dunes and see the stars, and
Yeah.
and that's just I would say I moderately love nature. I do love nature, but I'm not hiking every week. I'm not even someone who like hikes every weekend and camp. I don't camp. I'll say I don't camp. Right, I'm a glamper at best, and like even I will go out of town to see these beautiful features. So.
And I have even been in like little beach towns in Oregon,
Right.
where there are dispensaries that do not have glaring lights. They're still in
Yeah.
like very nice, welcoming, softly lit commercial areas that don't feel like you're in a factory town. You know what I mean? They feel like
Less industrial.
much less industrial. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we stand only to benefit
Yeah.
from these things is what else. I don't see any negative necessarily.
Well,
Well, there may be, but,
I think it's not fair to the voters if we don't see both sides of this because,
well, right, with businesses. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
because what you're doing is homeowner association stuff. I mean, if you take it too far.
Oh, well, right.
And then we're telling businesses how to spend their money and how to spend money that we don't,
Right.
this isn't all one-sided.
True. Sure. I did not mean to imply that. And I think
No,
like
no,
we
I
were.
just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was-
We were trying. I think like even Sam and I were trying to say, of course, if like the dispensary to stay open needs to keep lights on all the time, right? Right. Like we're not gonna.
Or
They're different.
the dispensary paid somebody who didn't know what they were doing and picked out the wrong light bulbs.
Right, that's entirely.
And whenever they burn out, we can ask them, hey, can you put in lower lumen light bulbs?
Right, so that's kind of also why I was like, if we start with the businesses, starting with the business or Chamber of Commerce might be like the best way, not best, but an easy way to do some of these without an iron fist of government.
And just having a conversation
Yeah.
with some of these businesses, like,
Yeah.
are you aware
Right.
this is the impact that the light is having, that folks are raising concerns? Have you considered maybe like putting a shield over some of your, controlling the direction of light? And there can be some low cost. I don't want to come to businesses and say, hey, you have to remodel all
Yeah,
your
yeah.
lighting and this is going to be thousands of dollars.
But that's exactly the way that the government's going to do it.
Well, we're the government. I mean, we don't know what we're going to do.
Okay, but we're not the government. There are people that are paid an hourly wage that can shut your business down because they just,
Well, and that's
Find
not
a
what
way
I'm
to do it.
encouraging in any way.
I know, but I'm saying we need to be very careful when we're creating regulations, we're taking away freedoms.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's,
and
I think
just-
that's why.
I'm just encouraging a conversation. I'm not encouraging building regulations right now. I'm just saying that talking to these business owners, seeing what their experience has been, maybe OTO has a great reason for having this lighting. I don't know, and we won't know until we talk to them.
Who does that?
I don't know. I don't have an answer to that.
So
Right, because our building department has not enough people. They don't go around having conversations. They go around shutting places down in 30 days.
So at
We're
our,
also hiring a new building department manager, so we are.
We have that
adding staff.
position open.
I believe
Is
they're
it-
offering, that was my last
That's
discussion.
great news.
And, sorry, I just want to jump back, kind of annoying, but all it says in terms of dispensaries is wattage necessary for safety.
right. They're very vague so far because this is also new.
It's very new.
Yes. And yeah, I did not mean to imply, of course. I don't want to inconvenience businesses, do not want to cost
It might be
unnecessary money.
interesting to have a workshop on lighting, because I appreciate are you using your lights in the best way for your business
Right.
conversation? And I know in my own home, I'm always having do I leave my front porch light on for security? So I feel like welcoming, or do I want the birds to fly overhead safely? And so we've kind of come up with what works best in our household that feels like a good balance. But I think that inviting people to be part of the conversation, that maybe OTO is like, oh, we should turn off all of our lights at night. And you just saved us, $1,000. That's great, thanks. Or maybe they're like, oh, we do leave it on because we need it on for the printers to work overnight. I have no idea.
Right.
But
Let's be clear that it looked like the lights are on the inside. So we're not at all talking
Oh, yeah.
about Otto making a good or bad choice here.
Yes. Yeah, we have we don't have enough
no, I'm just
context.
saying that's part of the conversation about, are there ways that this can be a win-win, that you can save money for your business and be
Win-win was more what I was looking for, not negative. That is more what I meant.
as be more neighborly. And
So last time at the last meeting, we did discuss with Keith the possibility of reaching out to like most businesses that we could think of who use commercial lighting, either via email or letter, and just inviting them to a whenever we like get further in the process, of course, like inviting them, because we had discussed, because we said last time, like businesses may not know that
Has
this is
anyone
even an issue.
They've contacted us, but
Yes.
does anyone contact that business and say,
Yes.
hey, your lights glare into my house all night? Because that business very well may not be aware
Aware.
that concern exists. And so I don't want us to get ahead of ourselves, and I'm not interested in building regulation that's shutting anybody's business down, that's asking them to spend thousands of dollars to change anything. I'm just trying to like open the doors of communication between people who have concerns and between the businesses who may or may not even be aware that those concerns exist.
agreed, same.
Also, we don't write ordinances to tell people they've been doing something illegal the whole time.
No.
That
So-
would be something separate.
Oh yeah.
Right, that is a very different conversation. So, which I'm grateful for the examples, but we've publicly shamed some people here, and I don't know that that's city council's job to do that, because they're doing something that they see fit that works for them right now. If we put a new ordinance in, we're not going to tell them you have to change things that you've been allowed to do for a while. So that I'm just concerned about getting on the ordinance train without specific parameters for it. Because all the examples we're talking about, we aren't really going to touch.
My understanding is some of them are already out of violation.
Well, then why are we having that conversation? Why isn't the building department taking care of that?
Well, I'm going to call the building department tomorrow and have a conversation about that.
Yeah. I would like to.
And
in
we didn't
talking
put
about-
this together.
Can I kind of jump in about the, one thing that I feel strongly about Norwood Avenue is that there is an equity problem here. Now, if this were on, Ashland and the church in Ashland said, I want to like expand or I want to make a 2-story and it's going to be a screen printer and it's right next to the collision place, no problem, Mr. Brown. And all people would come out and they'd say, you're going to have a fence, you're going to show me a drawing, PUD overlay, I want to see the type of light you're going to buy. People would be coming out and pressing and creating standards. One thing I was surprised is that auto didn't have to have a fence. Have a fence so that this person doesn't have to look at their parking lot. Well, that person probably didn't have council or the BZA on their radar. They don't go to this stuff. And so just because you can't come here and advocate doesn't mean the people across the street and next door should have their world turned upside down by this, when it's a choice of basically just a different light fixture, the wrong light fixture, you know, maybe even a light on a pole on the other side that shines toward the building would be a much more equitable, respectful, because we're talking about a business next to a home, and what did you call it, light trespassing? So we've got a light trespassing situation where now the home has to deal with that light. Just like barking dogs and music and noise pollution and nuisance barking, we have an ordinance against that. You have to listen to somebody else's dog bark. Same thing here. So, but the reality is, maybe this person works all the time. Maybe they're retired, they have no money. Maybe whatever. In that little pool, because I've lived over there, people think I'm not going to complain because it's not going to get me. And that's where council should look up for everybody. Putting little guys.
Right. I do think that light trespass is an issue of equity and justice, and I agree with that. The others are aesthetics, and I would love to visit quaint little towns, but I came to Norwood because I like it. And I don't want to turn it into an Airbnb destination. Yeah,
no.
right. So
that's a
there's
separate-
part of it. This is an aesthetic conversation, but then I think your last point is a equity and justice conversation.
And we want the birds to stay. Exactly. Yeah.
Just to kind of sort of build upon what you described, the aesthetics, the question is it aesthetic because there is no light trespass? So if you look at it, just, again, this is something that turns off, once you turn the lights off, the pollution goes away. I think that if you just focus on the pollution and the light trespass, the aesthetics will come later.
Yeah.
So don't even think about it as aesthetics. Focus on what I think that you've identified as the core issues, the equity, the light trespass, as well as making sure that we're not shaming individuals, that it's more of a collaborative approach to say, we're putting these standards in place because we are addressing a pollution as we would unnecessary noise, smoke. It's just that we've only, quote unquote, discovered that it is truly a pollution here recently. So focus, I think that you are on a very astute observation that you're trying to address the light trespass and the pollution aspect instead of trying to sell it as an aesthetic approach.
Yes.
And as a personal hobbyist, amateur astronomer, I can tell you exactly what Bortle number we are in our area, which is the light designation on
I think we're
light pollution.
one.
Yeah.
It's like the lowest of the,
Yeah.
one below, like, bright.
Right, but you've got to go somewhere near Cleveland to get to a number 4, which is the darkest skies. So, I mean, I definitely appreciate that we would have a better living experience. But I think the aesthetics versus focusing on the light trespass is where I think council can focus.
Oh, yeah. I mean, aesthetics are secondary. I think we were just like
And we're
going
not a
off
homeowners
on it.
association. And my point talking about like quaint little towns with there being a dispensary was the security aspect. If the concern with the dispensary's lighting is because they need it for a security feature, my point of bringing up a small town is that they also have dispensaries who also operate in only cash, who do not have that intense security lighting. We are not a homeowners association, so I'm not interested in policing the aesthetics. If people love cool lighting and bright signs, then like that's stellar for them. My concern is ensuring that everyone has fair access to comfortable living and not having to have blackout curtains in every window so they can sleep at night because there's not light trespassing into their home. So I don't want this to be misconstrued as like, well, I don't like how that looks. Whether I like how your building or business looks that's person to person, but legally everyone should have dark in their home at nighttime if they seek it. There should not be light streaming in from buildings across the street that is unavoidable from inside of your home.
Within zoning areas.
Maybe. I'm not super, I mean, I don't have much familiarity with that, so I don't
Because
want to speak
we have
about-
zoning for businesses that are in residential districts, and we have zoning for businesses that are in commercial districts, and they're very different. The regulations are.
Sure, yeah, I don't feel like I can speak on that because I don't have much familiarity with that, so I just think, yeah, and this is not me dogging on the supply company, I am sure that they chose that lighting for very valid reasons that are important to them, but I also think that if I lived in that house, I would be pretty distressed by that lighting.
I can understand that, and I think that light trespassing is an issue.
Yeah.
I think we're all in the same page, for the most part. Yeah. Okay. All right, well, I think this is a good, I mean, we started it last meeting, but I think this was a very good continuation, and thank you for bringing the PowerPoint, Dana. And we will just continue at the next meeting, I think, does anyone have anything specific they want to move forward with on the next agenda? But I think we just keep talking about it, keep doing our research, and maybe we could reach out to the building department and the Chamber of Commerce, I think, before the next meeting would probably be.
I can definitely reach out to the building department, just about what's currently happening in terms of,
It'd be good to know what they use to like measure and like, I don't know what the lighting restrictions are in a commercial. Yeah, off the top of my head, no, I can look it up, but
so I'll take that piece on.
okay.
I
And
could get a response from International Dark Sky.
right, and yeah, hopefully they will get back to me in the next couple of weeks, and I will keep reaching out to them. Yeah, and we'll just keep it on the agenda and update as we go along, I think. And if we come up with some practical solutions, that would be ideal.
Well, and I think if Mrs. Hoover is right and we have an offer that's going to turn out well, then
Right.
we have a building department manager who can put this as a priority.
Right.
Where, Mark is just an inspector and he's got 11 things to do every day.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. All right, awesome. Thank you, everybody. I think this was a productive conversation, so. All right, and now we can move on to our chicken ordinance. The chickens, which everybody loves. So I think everyone is good with the increase to 10, correct? And then I think the only issue that I was listening while I was packing from my trip to the last meeting that I missed. So the issue is the cost of the inspection, right?
That's my objection.
Right.
And the discussion that I heard in the meeting reflected that
Right.
we're all generally on board with everything. I just have the objection of the cost.
The cost, okay. So I guess I'll just start, like, what would be a reasonable cost? Or do you want to start?
Well, I could share, because I did some Googling.
Okay.
That's, I go to. I did not find any community that has anything similar that's good, or anything similar, period. So I came up with a couple thoughts and did a little exploring on them. I did want to share that Jim Shelby said we get a impressive $675 last year in permit fees.
Okay.
So this is not breaking the city, nor is this gonna fix a road. I have also done a little more research into the cost of having chickens, which does sort of support that it tends to be more of a hobby than a cost savings, but that.
Thank you.
I'll see you in a few weeks.
Have a good night.
It's gonna get really exciting talking about chickens. I know so much about chickens now. So actually,
So Alexis, I'll send you the PowerPoint and the PDF.
Oh, yeah, please, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. The average cost to take care of a chicken is about $100 a year for a flock of 3 to 5 chickens. One of the other things I was thinking of is the cost of like vet bills and that sort of thing. However, trying to make it accessible to everyone, I think, is not a bad idea. So my thought is, because I actually had a couple other ideas, like we keep the money the same but have them pay a small amount every year. We do not have the power to manage that. So my thought would be that if, and we can put this right on the permit, if someone receives food stamps or Social Security or Medicaid, that they could either get a $25 permit fee or have the fee waived. And then all they would need to do is bring in a copy and have that stapled to their application, and that would count as our way of validating that they are low income, and that they would need the greater access. So that was a thought.
Would we do something similar to that at the courthouse? Which, of course, access to courts is a little more serious, maybe more serious to some than access to chickens. But yeah, we do a very similar thing where we have, and we do it in the courtroom I work in, which is why I'm so familiar. But it's income based, and if you can't, if paying the court filing fees is a hardship, then you can waive it. So I think, and that's how we do it. If you receive any benefit, there's a presumption that you do not have the income to pay these fees. So any government benefit. So I don't think that's out of the realm of reason. And of course,
I did ask Keith about it, and his only response was, I guess so, and who would manage it? And so that would be through the permit. And
the permit
when
office.
you come in to do your permit, you would just have to bring proof of income or proof of assistance. And I did talk with a friend of mine who had over 40 years at JFS, and he said that the food stamp card and Medicaid would be the most universal. So what would you think about that?
just so we don't have any like personal information, do you think it makes sense if they just showed that to whoever they are getting the permit from instead of a copy attached? It's just what I'm thinking. If we go this far.
There could be a form that they sign when
Just-
issuing the permit that says that they witnessed.
I saw this
Yes.
thing.
sign it.
Just so that way we're not keeping.
Yeah, and
That's smart.
I thought a lot about doing like some sort of installation where they're paying $25 a year until they pay the
That's what I
fee.
was-
But the enforcement of that
Yeah,
is
keep-
such additional labor on the city's part that I worry that people would fall behind on upkeep and there would be confusion. And I feel like something like this where we're either just reducing it initially or waiving it when there is an income variance makes more sense in terms of being able to actually maintain the system.
Well, that makes sense to you, Jeff, since.
I mean, this is a fundamental thing I campaigned on. I don't know how many permits you guys have gotten from the city, but they've got a lot of my money.
Yeah.
I mean, $150 is apparently more significant to me than some other people, but, and maybe it's not. I just don't understand why we're saying if you want to have a hobby in Norwood, or if you want to put food on the table in Norwood, you have to give the government $150.
I mean, because our cost of issuing that permit and doing the inspection.
But we're the ones creating the bureaucracy.
But that money has to come
Because
from somewhere.
we're in.
No,
urban-
it doesn't. We don't have to charge a permit fee.
That's true, we don't. We do not, but we also don't, in theory, need to permit, but we choose to. because we live in an urban community and some oversight for that is, I believe, helpful and appropriate. And
I can
also
see it
it's a
being reasonable.
husbandry issue, animal husbandry issue. So for me, it's sort of like I have to have a dog tag for my dog.
How much is that?
You get it every 4 years.
Right.
So-
I've got them too, but
Yeah.
they're like $25 for 4 years.
Right, but that also doesn't involve them coming to my house and doing an inspection.
But we're writing that bureaucracy.
Yes, we are.
We're the ones that say what they have to do, and then we're going to charge them for this.
Yes.
I'll just, I think what Susan, because, we can have differing policies,
And
opinions.
you guys
obviously.
can outvote me. That's fine.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah. No hard feelings is what I'll start. And I'll just say, I personally value us taking the time to make sure that someone is properly taking care of the chickens they're going to keep in their yard. And you can,
Do I do that to your cat?
no, my cat died, so there's no cat now. Thanks, Jeff. No, I'm just kidding. But no, you're right. But I paid an adoption fee. I had to do an
That was
application
your choice.
process.
That was all.
It was, yeah.
Not the government's situation. Okay.
Right. But yeah, I could have gotten a cat off the street. You're right, a random cat. But I would say,
That lives in your house. You didn't have to build your cat an outdoor structure that could be spreading.
We're the ones telling them you can't keep these hobbies in your house.
oh, the chickens? I guess in theory you could keep a chicken in your house if you wanted. I don't know. In theory, yeah. I don't know if we have any regulations against that
I don't think you are allowed
Okay.
to harbor animals
within your home.
home. And also that would not be in the best interest of the chickens because they require sunlight.
To me, this feels like a health and safety issue. I think that
How so?
if chickens are kept in unclean or unsafe circumstances, I think the risk of spreading disease and illness is much further spread than a domesticated indoor animal.
Do we tell people to clean up the poop in their backyard from their dogs?
Yes, we have an ordinance about it.
In your own yard?
Yes, there's an ordinance about it.
If the smell gets too
You
crazy,
wanna talk
yeah,
about
your
dogs?
name, yeah.
We talk about dogs all day long.
We did do a lot of dog stuff last
Because
term.
again,
much
that's
dogs
a
there.
disease concern as well.
Yeah.
Smell
Having
concern.
copious amounts of feces sitting around for an indefinite amount of time.
Yeah.
And your dog is not producing anything that's being consumed by people, is
And
the
I-
other thing.
I would say,
Like,
okay.
chickens are producing eggs, which people are probably consuming. So I feel like there's a different level of risk involved here. In 10 chickens being kept outdoors and 1 dog being kept indoors.
And my understanding is when Mr. Shelby goes out, he will point out weaknesses in their fences and things because of course chickens do attract larger predators. And I know I have a family member, she now has no chickens because
Weasel.
there have been multiple foxes, raccoons. And once they do find an easy target, they are smart enough to keep coming back, which is very sad for all the chickens involved. So of course, we do have an interest. I would say generally, in my opinion, the city has an interest in making sure the chickens aren't easy targets. Raccoons aren't dragging bloody dead chickens across the street or
By
what
that
have you.
logic, I can start legislating how we keep our cats because the number one thing Norwood is really good at is losing our pets. And why don't we start legislating everybody else's pets?
Well, I mean, you can't have your dog out without a leash. It has to be within reasonable control.
Right, but I can let my dog run loose in my backyard.
Yeah, you can.
It
You're right. This is on the home, which I get. I get if
This
that
is
is.
just a whole extra step of bureaucracy,
Yeah.
and I don't know why we're creating more for our city to keep up with.
I think chickens are living, breathing animals that are not domesticated pets, and so they are legally treated as they are a farm animal, and we are not a rural town, and so there has to be, in my opinion, some sort of oversight of keeping farm animals on non-farm settings to ensure, A, that the animal is safe and cared for and being treated well, and B, that we are not letting things get out of control and not letting people have entire petting zoos in their backyards. Or, I think there's safety concerns, I think there's health concerns, I think there's concerns with the animal's well-being. And I think comparing it to a dog or a cat is not necessarily an equivalent. I think because those are domesticated pets and this is literally a farm animal, there's different sets of expectations, there's behavioral differences. Chickens are not domesticated.
We do also have laws against other farm animals. We're not allowed pigs, although I have seen a big pig a time or two. So, yeah, we do legislate what animals are allowed in the community as well.
So why not have the permit application person sign an affidavit saying they will do these things? And if we find out that they don't, you know, through a call to the health department and an inspection, you know, like part of the affidavit says they could be inspected within 24 hours or something like that. And then if they don't, the city can fine them $10,000. We can call it a fundraiser. But I don't understand why we're forcing people to have a payment to the city when they pay taxes.
They just don't have to. It's my perspective. We're not
Then we don't
forcing
have to
them-
charge them.
We're not
Like,
forcing them to keep chickens, so we're not forcing them to pay. You know, it's a
but then it's
luxury.
not a free country. I mean, I'm not like making a huge, you know, like freedom issue, but what's the difference now between us and a homeowner association?
It's a safety concern for me.
I would say it's a
Okay?
public
An
health.
affidavit is just as good as that. It causes Jim Shelby no extra work, streamlines the
My
process,
concern would
super
be
free.
how bad would the circumstance have to get before a neighbor becomes aware of it? And at that point, what kind of risks have been presented as a result of however long of miskeeping of the animals? I am a very mind my business neighbor, and I don't know how bad my neighbor's chickens would have to get before I was concerned enough to report it. And so what risk is the city and the neighborhood and the immediate neighbors of that chicken coop at by the time something gets reported? I think there's a lot more potential for risk in that situation.
How many violations have been reported in the last couple of years?
I think
I do. He said it was not exact. He said there's been a few, but they were all resolved prior to reinspection, I believe was the direct quote, but I can find it for you.
I think that's I would say that's at least a paraphrase of what you said last time. So
And my next question would be, are we not having very many reports and violations because of the initial? Is the initial inspection addressing the concerns before the chickens are living there so that we aren't having as many violations?
That's logical.
Yeah, which makes me want to keep the inspection. That's preventing further violations.
I'm okay with the inspection. I just want it to cost $25.
$25 a year, or just $25 once.
$25? I mean,
Flat, once.
well, the ordinance has changed it to a flat fee.
Yeah,
It was an annual 25.
Yeah.
And our recommendation
Was to do a
change
once.
A once to 150.
150.
And your suggestion is to make it a once for $25.
If Jim Shelby was able to do it for $25 each time, why are we suddenly saying now we need to charge 6 times that?
We were losing money every time.
well, and
We lose money on every regulation we put in the city.
Well, and I'll just say, we had Jeannie Stanton here, and she said she has paid more than 150. I think the 150 may have even come from her, because,
No, I found it looking at other.
okay, but she said they preferred a flat fee, is what she, instead of the 25 a year, because of course, I think she said she's had her chickens for 10 years. So she's ended up paying much more than $150. Yeah.
But when I've talked to Jeannie Stanton about this ordinance, I know the reason they're wanting to change it is because when they originally created the ordinance, they pulled a number out of a hat and said, this isn't the number now. Why are we creating bureaucracy that we're just sending through City Hall? We need to be intentional about this, and I don't understand why they were like, you know what, it's going to be nice to the city to charge a little extra money. I agree with them, but I think there's a lot of people in Norwood who $150 is a lot more to you and me than it is to them.
Vice
versa.
To be clear, $150 is a lot to me. That's not throwaway money for me. But you spoke to Mr. Shelby and basically talked about how much time it takes. It wasn't pulled out of a hat, the 150, just to be clear, because you did speak.
I spoke with him and I
Yeah.
looked at lots of other ordinances to see when they do a flat fee, what is the cost? And that was at the lower end. Some of them were 170, 160.
She
There's
tried-
several 150s.
You tried to calculate basically the time it takes for,
Yeah, he spends about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Doing the inspection, but he also calls folks ahead of time to make sure, that they're home and So,
You
yeah.
have to file a report.
Yeah. So this was just, our goal was to break even and just so that Mr. Shelby we weren't losing time and money with him going. But, and I totally, if you think $150 is too much, like, that is,
I mean, we can do whatever we want as
Yeah.
a committee and as the council, but we're reducing the amount of work on the city and multiplying the cost of the permit. And so
No. Because Ms. Stanton has already paid more than 150, so it would actually, for her situation, that would be less
overall.
overall.
Assuming you keep your chickens for 5 years,
yeah, but
which is a big assumption, but
this is about people after the ordinance passes, not people
But even
past.
people.
Oh, no.
Passes. If we pass the ordinance and then someone gets chickens and they keep those chickens for 10 years,
They'll
they've
pay more.
saved $100 versus paying $25 a year for those.
So as a business person, we're sending out Jim Shelby one time versus to
5
Jeannie
times.
Stanton's house
Yeah.
5 or 10
every
times.
year, yeah.
Right? So we're reducing the amount of times that Jim Shelby has to go to Jeannie Stanton's house, and we're jacking up the price that Jim Shelby is charging by 6.
We're increasing it per visit.
We were
but we're
losing
not
money last
increasing
time.
it per life of the chickens coop, chicken area.
But the building department runs in a deficit anyways by a few $100,000. Like we're not trying to make the building department self-sustaining.
Right.
If we want to do that, we can outsource it, and they only charge us 90% of our permits. So we can save a lot of money if we just outsource that. But there's a good reason that we keep things in-house in Norwood.
I'll just,
I mean, I'm the only voice on council that has voted against this.
No, Ms.
so-
Braden voted.
yeah, I think Mr.
That's
Braden,
right.
yeah.
So
For the reading.
I'm not trying to hold it up.
Oh, no.
But-
We wanted to have, I mean, I'll say I wanted to have the conversation because I know, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we talked about it last term as well when it first came up, I believe. I think it came up previous term. I know that this conversation was started. So I understood, like, of course, and it makes sense if you thought the 150 came out of thin air, because it seems random. But like I said, actually, I think we came back because it was another number before. And I think actually a previous council member was like, why is it this cost? If I'm remembering correctly. And we came back and talked about the cost again. So I didn't want you to think, I'm glad we could have this conversation because I didn't want you to think it was just pulled out of thin air.
And I think right now it's sort of a philosophical issue
Yeah.
in a couple different ways. One is, do we want to legislate what people do in our backyards? And some are saying yes and some are saying no. I think part of the conversation is 150 too much for some people? Is it too much for everyone? Does the city want to say this is simply an amenity we give you for being a Norwoodian, that you get $25 to have chickens? Like, is that just a gift we give the community? And then if you have food stamps, then you have 0. Like, if that is where our philosophy is, if our philosophy is we want to try to at least break even on the chickens, then that's if we do the 150. So again, this is not going to fix a road. This is $675 is what they got last year. So
I mean, and
Excuse me.
my thought on it is I'm not interested in policing what people are doing in their own yards until it poses a health and safety risk to me.
Agreed.
And then I think it's not about that person and their yard and their property anymore. It's about everyone around them as well. And so I want to be assured as a neighbor, I will never have chickens. My wife does not want chickens. I personally would love to have chickens. But unfortunately, I don't get to make every decision by myself in my house.
Same boat.
I think chickens are really cool. But if my neighbors got chickens, I would want to know, A, that the chickens were being cared for, B, that the chickens weren't going to be spreading disease into my yard or into the cats that live on the street that might eat a chicken and then come into my yard. And C, that there was like some sort of knowledge at some level above my neighbors that was all happening in a safe and sound way for both the neighborhood and those chickens and that homeowner. And I don't want coyotes and foxes and things to be safe for little kids and for people's cats that sometimes get lost. My
They do,
cats,
they do.
personally,
Yeah,
I
they
got
do.
every window in my house replaced last year, and they said, "Do you want these really cool flex screens?" That
And you were
can-"
like, "No."
And I got them, and then last week my cats shoved one out of the window and thought they'd go on an adventure on my front porch. So what I will say is, my cats who never go outside still somehow manage to break free. And if there were coyotes lingering around because they like to snatch a chicken from a loose wall in a chicken coop, I would be very distressed.
Yeah. So, I think this is just a difference in policy
Yeah, so-
and philosophy. And I would argue it does cut back on some bureaucracy, right? Because, again, our chicken cohort that came, they said, like, they felt the annual inspections were redundant. Because what they said, I think they even said, like, there haven't been any they knew there hadn't been any cited violations. So they said, like, and I think they said it's helpful for Jim to come and say what they could improve on, what they need to improve on, and they do it. And then
Especially if it's your first time having
Yeah.
chickens, you might not know what you don't know.
I would love a once over.
For me, the thing that I feel the most passionate about this whole issue, an inspection, in my opinion, has to happen initially. I'm not interested in there being an affidavit that says I'll follow these rules. I want an inspection to happen, whether we pay for it, whether they pay for it. My most passionate point about this is that I want an inspection to happen up front initially to ensure that everything is on the up and up. That's the only thing that I feel 100% about. I think the cost, I absolutely see it
Yeah.
every way. But I want an inspection initially.
I did 4-H as a kid. I totally get. Yeah, I do. I took pigs to fair, so I had those pigs on farm, and they got chickens while I was in the middle of 4-H. So I get it. I do. Like, I am familiar with rural communities, and
things happen on the
chickens. They do, and chickens thrive out in those communities with, I feel, little barrier, but
My
we are
first job ever was
at the farm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the only pressure for me at this point is moving something through because
We want the
it's
chick.
chicken season.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm hearing you say that you'd like to have a penalty if someone misses. Right now, misses an inspection or fails an inspection. Excuse me. There's no penalty. So if that's something you think we should do, we can talk about that. Otherwise, I would love if we could and I'm not married to the 150 or 25. I probably would lean towards 25 because I think I do want, a little skin in the game. And, the coops are expensive, even if you build them yourself. You can buy them online for $1,500 to $5,000. See, I'm all ready for chicken.
I had also Googled how much chicken was.
And so I'm also aware that for the vast majority of people, this does continue to be a hobby.
It's not a cost saving measure.
Yeah. And the other thing just to point out is that our ordinance does not allow folks to sell eggs. So these are all for private consumption, just to throw that out there, in terms of like safety and
No one's starting an egg farm,
no one's,
but they might be giving them to their neighbors.
you can give eggs.
Yeah, you just can't.
You just can't sell eggs. So do we think we could come up with a number tonight that we could put forth to the council as a whole?
I'm fine lowering it. I'm not married to 150 either. I just know that was like kind of what we thought was reasonable, but there's a reason we have differing voices on council. So.
And I don't want this conversation to be like it's 150 or it's 0 and there's no middle ground.
Oh, yeah.
I want us to be able to compromise and land somewhere where everyone feels more comfortable.
I know, do you have something you think is reasonable since this was?
I mean, in a broader policy context, I'd like to maybe say all permits are the same price. And, because they're all bureaucracy where we have to go out and check on something. So it seems to me there should be a standard price. I don't know why we're saying that this permit needs to be 6 times the cost whenever we send somebody out for $25 on other things. So my only issue is I think $150 is too much for this ordinance.
Okay. Do you have a number you think is more reasonable?
I'll throw out 25.
You think 25? Okay.
And I'm sorry, I blanked out for a second. Are you saying it's okay to have the fee waived for low-income folks? Or are you feeling like 25 is 25 is 25?
It would make me feel better if it was just $25.
Okay.
I campaigned on the issue of lowering permit fees in Norwood, so I will not vote yes on $150. But you don't need my vote.
No, that wasn't my question.
I know, I'm just saying, I would like it to be 25 period.
Okay.
Regardless
Would-
of people's financial status.
Yeah, because I do think,
So if someone says, I can't pay the 25, I have a food stamp, can I pay 0? You are not okay with that.
I mean, sure, I think
Oh, okay.
we could do that, but,
That was what I was proposing.
yeah, but,
Sorry.
but I'm not on food stamps, and $150 is a lot I to me, Susan.
Oh, no.
I
She
know.
meant-
No, my suggestion, I'm sorry, my suggestion is it's all 25 for everyone. If you have a food stamp card or Medicaid, then it's free.
Sure.
That's that's what I think might be a compromise.
Okay. So of course, my concern is just getting this through. Not getting it through, pushing it, not to push it through.
Change the wording and send it to Keith,
Okay.
and it's,
So have we landed on, well, we can change the language, just 25 flat for one inspection, one initial inspection. And then you can waive it if you prove do we want to do a presumption of indigency if they're, sorry, look at me throwing out my legal terms. A presumption of indigency if a government benefit is received and they show proof of that benefit too.
yes.
From an
Whatever.
equity and accessibility standpoint, I feel that it's important to accommodate.
Okay,
While I will say, I don't think that anyone is raising chickens as a cost-saving measure. I do think that, like, if
That's
people
fine,
want to
yeah.
have hobbies, they should be able to have hobbies.
right.
I think this is a little bit different than, like, quilting being your hobby because it impacts other people. But
Okay.
I do think from an accessibility standpoint, being able to waive that if there is proof of financial hardship.
Okay. So we will say,
Maybe your friend gave you a chicken coop. I don't know. Someone
so I'll
wants to
say
give
if
you-
the applicant is unable to make the cost,
Yeah, and I think that would be as
cost,
easy
they
as
may
having
show
that whoever is issuing
proof
the permit can
of
sign.
indigency.
It could even be one line at the bottom of the permit.
Right.
This is what I saw, this is my signature date, yeah.
I'm sorry. I missed that last part because I was trying to write this down.
My thought would be at the bottom, it says, proof of low income, document.
I would just say, I was going to put proof of a government benefit. Is that sufficient?
That we can just add a line to the bottom of
And
the permit.
I'm sure Keith or Tim can look up the correct.
Yeah.
I don't have my form in front of me, so I don't
The
have.
whole point is just that we can add that as a line at the bottom of the permit.
yes.
So that it's
Without
still
extra-
one document and whoever issues it can just initial that they.
Oh, yeah,
witnessed
look
it.
at the signature. Yep. And I'll put that basically as a,
I'm sorry if I made this contentious.
You did
Oh,
make
no,
it
no.
contentious. It's important to hear other perspectives.
yes, yeah.
$150 for the record
Oh.
is like a ton of money to me.
Yeah,
I don't
yes.
want anybody to be thinking that I'm out here rolling in dough because that is not the case.
I am an attorney, but I am a government attorney. That is a lot of money
I work
for.
for a nonprofit, so
Myself,
Are you paying yourself well?
I do not pay myself well.
I actually do know that. Okay, so we'll put that as a not as a footnote, but as a qualifier. Qualifier at the bottom, and we're just gonna say 25 flat for,
What about dogs barking?
We have an ordinance.
there is an ordinance for that. Mhm.
I've read that somewhere, and I need to. My neighbor is rightfully upset at my dog a few times. A few times a week, he
I
gets a
sort
little
of
noisy.
just decided that when the dog next door to me is barking at me, it's because she doesn't know we're friends yet.
I did not
So
have
when
dog
she barks at
barking
me,
on
I
the
do just-
agenda, just
Right.
for the record. Yes.
This is not city business. I'm just saying
we're
that
not-
I
We are still on, I don't think Steve has turned us off, so, okay, so just before we go, and then we will not discuss that after, because we are not in a,
Right,
yes.
correct.
So we are going to add the qualifier that if it is, cost is an issue, you can prove, with proof of benefit, you can waive the fee, and then just $25 flat for the fee, the fee for the inspection. Everyone's good.
and only the initial inspection.
Okay.
No more annual
And
inspections.
I'm going to,
They are, and I believe it's in there,
Subject.
they're subject to inspection, any follow-up.
it's in, yeah, I think that's already in there, so, and we're all
Like I
fine with
said,
that.
I think the ordinance is great, except for.
Except for your 150. Okay, and we have, look at this compromise. Great job, everybody. Steve, I think we are all done. Thank you for anyone at home who sat through all of this.
Good night, Norwood.
Yeah.
I know folks who watch these with, back.